سبحانه وتعالى عما يشركون وما كان الناس إلا أمة واحدة فاختلفوا ولولا كلمة سبقت من ربك لقضي بينهم فيما فيه يختلفون صدق الله العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد. أحسنت. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Inshallah, we will continue on the reflections on the ayat of Surah Yunus. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the effort of those who make the time and the effort to participate in learning and reflecting on the ayat of the Holy Quran. According to the riwayah, the best ones are those who learn the Quran and teach the Quran. خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. Our classifications normally are off when we classify who are the best people and how do we respect people. Oftentimes people look at their financial status, their which neighborhood they live in, what car they drive, and so on. And the believers should be more focused on knowledge. And that's what Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, who in fact the middle of Rajab belongs to him. This Ghurra. Ghurra is when the month is in the center of it, when the moon is in the full stage, 13, 14, 15. And so the Imam salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, who was born on the 13th, he, in numerous ahadith and numerous statements and answers, he emphasized that knowledge is more important than wealth. And when it comes to Quran, knowledge in general is good, but knowledge of the Quran is obviously the highest and the best. And خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. Inshallah, we're amongst them. So we finished ayah 15 last session. A quick refresher since we also had a break. As we said, Surah Yunus is one of the earlier surahs that were revealed, and it was revealed in Mecca. It's known as the Makki Surah. And in there is obviously the principles. As we said, the Makki surahs focused on the principles of, or the roots of the religion, the main core of the religion, the usul, basically to establish the theological beliefs of the people. Eventually, then they can move on to the law and jurisprudential understanding of the religion. So it deals with the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and denying the idols and so on. It deals with the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and also reminding us of the Day of Judgment. And these concepts keep repeating themselves. It's very, very important for us to understand why is the Quran repeating these concepts. Concept of Tawheed, concept of Ma'ad, and Nubuwa, Quran. In multiple surahs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the Quran. ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه ألف لام ميم تلك آيات or ألف لام را تلك آيات الكتاب, and so on. So all these ayat in the Holy Quran speaking about the Quran, confirming that it's a miracle from God, it's a message from God, and so on. And here it is repeated again. The reason there's so much repetition, it's not just to confirm it for those who deny, though that is part of it. It was a process of getting those who deny the message and the messenger and the akhirah and the oneness of God, to get them to understand. So that's one thing. But also, for those who actually believe, they need reminders. We need to be constantly reminded of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to be constantly reminded of the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and also be reminded of akhir. Otherwise, you'll find many, many Muslims who don't live by the Quran. This is the message of God. They don't live by that. They form idols for themselves in life. Money is one of the idols. So I remember back, I was at the time in Iran, and somebody brought the dollar bill, I think $100 bill or something, and said, these people, their God is money. I said, what do you mean? He said, come look. It says, in God we trust. On the dollar bill, they have that, So, obviously the people who put that on the dollar bill were not necessarily suggesting that this is God. On the contrary, they were believers who were basically establishing the country on the basis of faith, which is a beautiful thing, and putting God's name on their money. But how do people behave towards money? And we'll find that many people consider the one thing that controls their lives and betters their lives and so on is money. In fact, often people say, money makes the world go around. Yeah. So, and that itself is, if they mean it, and in its literal sense, it's shirk. That statement itself. To think that it is money that brings them happiness, it is money that is gonna make their lives better, it is money that this and that, you'll find that this itself is a level of shirk. And we are, many of us might be, in fact, victims of that line of thought or that ideology. And so Quran reminds us again and again so that we purify our hearts from any level of shirk and any level of doubt of akhirah. The doubt in akhirah could be basically uttered out and verbalized. Somebody says, I'm not sure. Someone came to me once after one of the programs in one of the centers here in this city. He came to me, it was a Thursday night program, and he came to me and he said, how do I know that for sure we will be resurrected? So that doubt is there. And I asked him, I said, you participate in Thursday nights and almost every week they recite Surah Yasin. He said, yes. So the problem is most of us, we read, but we don't understand. The surah answers that. وَضَرَبَ لَنَا مَثَلًا وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ. He gave us the example and forgot his own creation. And he said, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already answered the question before even pausing it. قَالَ مَنْ يُحْيِي الْعِظَامَ وَهِيَ رَمِيمٌ. He said, who is going to resurrect the bones once it turns into dust? And the answer was what? وَنَسِيَ خَلْقَهُ. He forgot his own creation. But again, another answer, or said, second time confirmation. قُلْ يُحْيِيهَا الَّذِي أَنْشَأَهَا أَوَّلَ مَرَّةٍ. The one who created it the first time. So some may have doubts on that level. That, okay, are we going to be resurrected? Others, and some may verbalize it, some may not. It's just a doubt in their minds. Others may have doubts on a practical level. Whenever we are doing something that is contradicting God's law, whenever we're harming someone, whenever we're backbiting, for example, okay, slandering someone, whenever we are doing anything that, as a believer, we know that has a very bad result. The consequences of it on the day of judgment are not going to be good. Whenever this is happening, if we don't have a strong enough deterrent within ourselves, that therefore we have doubts. If we don't have strong deterrence within ourselves, therefore we have doubts about resurrection. One has to have a deterrent, واعظا من نفسه in the hadith, a reminder within himself, within herself, a deterrent within ourselves, and a reminder that there's going to be a day of judgment. I'm going to have to face this. I say something rude to someone. I do something bad towards someone. I take someone's rights. I slander someone behind their back. Whatever it is that I do I not realize that I will be facing these people on the day of judgment, and that they will come and say, give us some of your good deeds. You have to pay. Here we pay with money. What do we pay with in Akhirah? We pay with a'mal, transactions between people. We're not speaking about the relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't want anything from us. But amongst us people, on the day of judgment, there will be transactions where you have to give up some of your good deeds. If not, you have to take some of their bad deeds. One of the scholars, ulama, he puts it nicely. He says, imagine opening your book and seeing in there that you've killed somebody, or that you have, God forbid, raped somebody, or that you have done some horrible things. And you say, I have never done that. Then it's what? Someone else's, that you wronged them. And by you wronging them, you had to take off some of their bad deeds. These are the transactions that will happen. Now, if we believe and we're genuine in our faith, in Akhirah, that would be itself a deterrent. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continuously in the Quran, especially in the surahs that are revealed in Mecca, continuously reminds us, but it's actually, this concept of Akhirah is actually all over, across the board. Nevertheless, these principles are repeated again and again, especially in the Makki surahs, to not just for those who don't believe to believe, but for those who believe to become real believers. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, aminu. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, oh, you who believe, believe. Why? This first amanu is you entered in the realm of the believers. That's good. You gave the testimony of faith, you're a believer. But now believe, be genuine and be sincere in your belief. So back to ayah, again, a quick refresher on ayah 15, which is related to the following ayat 16 and pretty much 16. and 17 a little bit. Inshallah, we'll cover that. وَإِذَا تُتْلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُنَا بَيِّنَاتٍ Whenever the ayat are recited upon them, and the answer already was there, we said when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says bayinat. So it's so clear that it's a sign from God. It's not known that there's no doubt about it. Yet they say, those who don't hope and don't care for akhirah, they say, bring us a different Quran or change this one. ائت بقرآن غير هذا أو بدل. Either bring us some different Quran or change it, tweak it to suit our lifestyles, to not contradict our core beliefs. We believe that these idols that we make with our own hands represent gods, and these gods are the ones who get us close to the one God. They believed in the one God. They believed in the Creator, by the way. The mushrikeen of Quraysh and the mushrikeen of that time, and most idolaters. In fact, I was speaking to Hindu in an interfaith session, and they said to me, "No, we believe in one God. We do believe in the one God. So what are all these different gods similar?" So it sounds like either they change their story or their beliefs, or they want to fit with the monotheistic religion, so they say we believe in the one God, or they actually do believe in the one God as the creator, and then all these other gods as the aids and the helpers, and their sustainers and wasila. Yeah, ahsan. Yeah, so they're the means. And that's what the Quraysh did, actually. We have the ayat in the Quran frequently mentioning this, that if you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they say Allah. So they do believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the God, in the one God. However, their issue is they think that this piece of stone representing an individual, we have to be careful, whichever school we belong to, not to fall in their footsteps one way or another. So they believe that, we make this stone thing and it becomes a blessed thing. It connects us to the gods, and those gods get us close to the one God, because we are not pure to speak to the one God or to ask the one God, the creator. Or some of them, they think there's the creator and the sustainers. So all these other gods are responsible for different things. And the one God who created, once he created, he assigned certain things to them. So he says, okay, you take care of the rain, you take care of the vegetation, you take care of the wind, and so on and so forth. And obviously that would have brought in chaos. Quran says, قُلْ لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لفسدتا. If there were gods besides the one God, if there were different ones, the entire universe would have been ruined. Because anything that you leave up to different individuals without one managing the whole thing, it becomes chaotic. There's no synchronization and coordination. In a workplace, you have a CEO. In any company, in a ship, you have a captain, and so on. So they did not like the fact that he wanted them to denounce their gods and so on, and this Quran speaks ill of their gods. They said, change it. And so the first response came in that ayah, قُلْ ما يكون لي أن أبدله من تلقاء نفسي. It's not my choice to change it, he says. That is in ayah 15. So I can't change it from my own accord. I like to change it, therefore I change it. And then he says, he confirms that I'm only following what is revealed to me. إِنْ أَتَّبِعُ إِلَّا مَا يُوحَى إِلَيْهِ. And then, إِنِّي أَخَافُ, here is a warning for them. A warning about and a reminder about the day of judgment. إِنِّي أَخَافُ إِنْ عَصَيْتُ رَبِّي عَذَابَ يَوْمٍ عَظِيمٍ. I am fearful that if I disobey my Lord, I would face the torment of a day that is not a regular day. It's a great day. It's a big day. And the descriptions of that day is given in different chapters and ayat of the Holy Quran. even especially in the Makki surahs. So عذاب يوم عظيم here, reference to all these ayat about the day of judgment. Now, why isn't it عذاب يوم اللقاء? We said it is because لقاء Allah is a beautiful thing. It started قال الذين لا يرجون لقاءنا, those who don't wish and hope for the meeting with their Lord, they deny and they ask for a different Quran. However, the day of judgment, though it is the day of the meeting with the Lord, but the meeting with the Lord cannot, it does not fit well with the adab. And this is something that confirms that adab is our own actions. Adab and the torments and the hellfire and so on, all of it is the direct consequences of our own actions. God said it in the realm of creation, and we choose where do we want to go. So I'll give you an example. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He formed this universe or this earth that we live in, He made our bodies tolerate a certain level of heat. Beyond that, it is burning. Yeah, it burns us, and that's how He created it. Now you see fire or coal or even volcanic material or whatever it is. Extreme fires, and it's there, and you say, okay, I'm gonna put my hand there. Okay, and somebody says, don't do that, this is gonna burn you. I'm gonna put it. Who do we blame if I put my hand in there and burn? I should blame none but myself. Yeah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala formed this universe. It is all interrelated. Dunya and akhirah are related. Okay. Nash'at al-ula and nash'at al-akhirah. And so whatever we're doing here reflects there. If I disobey God, I am putting myself in that torment, in that fire. That is the reality of it. It's not that God is not merciful anymore. Wal-'ayadu billah. Never. In this dunya, He cares for us, and He will care for us in akhirah. He loves us, and He loves us. It doesn't change. In fact, in Dua Kumail, some of the lines allude to this from Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salamu alayhi, where he says, you raised me, you nurtured me, you took care of me. In the hellfire, what is my complaint? أين أنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين. In dunya, whenever I was desperate, I called Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In hellfire, who do they call? So what does He say? He confirms that I call you too. He says, if I'm allowed to speak in the hellfire, what do I say? لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين. I will make so much noise in there with so much hope. ضجيج الآملين, with so much hope, knowing that you are the merciful God. So nothing changed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the merciful God. What is hellfire? It's the consequences of our own actions. So عذاب يوم عظيم. Then yes.
So yesterday I was having a discussion with someone. If God has full knowledge, why would He allow the evil people or evil actions to exist, to come into fruition? Why couldn't He have prevented that? Because He had knowledge of that.
Yeah, Ahsan, very good. So,
although we have it's not denying that there is free will.
Ahsan.
It's not coming from that point. They still admit that there is free will. But why did God, out of His knowledge, knowing that people will still do this, let them live?
So this is the very important point to actually understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created insan with the ability to disobey. and with certain tendencies that may lead to disobedience unless tamed and controlled. So the nafs and its shahawat, the desires of the self, the nafs, those desires lead to one wanting to achieve or reach some level of momentary and short-lived pleasures of this dunya. And oftentimes those things lead to disobedience and sinful behavior. And so he created us with that because it is through that that we can reach the highest levels. Without that, I remember my eldest, Muhammad Ismail, when we were speaking about this many years ago, he complained, why did he give it to us? Then we could have been like angels. If he didn't give us the free will, we would have been like angels. And so I had to explain to him that we have the potential of going higher than angels because of that. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have that opportunity. Now, with everything comes a price tag with it. So a challenge. Okay, everything that God gives, there's a challenge with it. The challenge of free will is that, yes, many humans would choose to do certain things that are not right, that are sinful and so on. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow them to do that? That is part of the free will altogether. Knowing, and we know that He knows of all what is to come, knowing that this is all going to come, why did He give them the life in the first place? Some people may go further and ask, why did He make them exist in the first place? So this again, this at some level, we would not have all the answers in the sense that we don't know. أعلم تعلم ما في نفسي ولا أعلم ما في نفسك. You know what's in what is in my mind. Okay, what is on my mind, what I'm about to say, what I'm thinking. You know, God knows. We don't know at all from our side towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't know exactly how this entire resurrection and the hellfire and the khulud, the eternity there, how does it work, how long, all of these details. It's called eternity, khuld, وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين. However, does anyone live eternally? Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah, He is the azali. He is the awwal and akhir. There's nobody else has that level. So how long does it take? Do they eventually come out of that after purification? Is there any level that they would come out of that? We don't know exactly. So we don't know. We cannot be sure why did He allow it, but we can make guesses. For example, we would not appreciate the ones who purify if we don't see the ones who don't purify. We would some levels of learning the lessons happens through watching those who have ill behavior. Nabiullah Isa alayhi salam, according to Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he was asked, how did you become how you are? How did you reach here? And he said, I detested the actions of those who were sinful and disobedient, and that me detesting that made me, deterred me completely from doing anything like it. Okay, so this is, we often speak of this in the hub and bughd in deen. We have love and hatred, loving good and hating the evil. Okay, so he says, I detested the actions of those who were disobedient. Therefore, I did not go near it. So now seeing those things. Now one may ask, but they are going to struggle. Why? That level, we cannot deny the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is fair and just. In fact, life is a favor. Giving them life, He already did them a favor. Okay, we call it the fadl. Okay, this is a fadl from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't owe any of us a life. He doesn't owe any of us anything. So giving us life is a favor from Him. So they already received favors from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And some of their accounts get cleared in this dunya. When they do some good, they get their accounts cleared in this dunya to prepare for the akhirah. Now that akhirah, how does it work exactly? How deep can we go into the punishment and the reality of it? And I believe we have to stick to what Quran says and not go to some of the Gnostics and some of the Sufi, because some of them they claim that this whole thing is imaginary. Okay, they go that far because they cannot, because they speak so much of God's mercy. This is the questioning is based on the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That question is, He knew, why did He allow them? Okay, because He is the merciful. So why did He? So because their belief in His mercy is so strong, they deny the entire Jahannam and all. They say all of this is just, and they use ayat from the Holy Quran. There's a guy in Iraq nowadays. He became quite popular in some media, like that, the contradicting and the controversial ideas and ideologies. So his thing is this whole thing is there's no hellfire. According to him, there's no hellfire. And then he says even paradise is not like how you believe it is. These people who have nothing to do but to sit and eat and drink, and so he has his own theories basically. Where did you get this from? وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ. You have knowledge of that? God revealed something to you. أَن تَقُولُونَ عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Are you saying things that you don't know? That's a reality of it. You don't have knowledge of it, therefore you're just saying things. So we stick to what the Quran has to say, and we try and understand God's mercy within the Quran. The details of it, why did He allow them to live knowing that they will end up being punished? Okay, He did them a favor. If we look at it on a very, very basic thing, okay, it is almost like a father who has wisdom and understanding and sees the way a child is going, okay, and this child is being rebellious, disobedient, and so on. At some point, would you ask, okay, why did this father not get rid of this child, for instance? Okay, now you might say, well, he doesn't know for sure, okay, because he lacks that knowledge. What if he knew for sure? Should he then? You know what I mean? So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew for sure of certain people and their ending, okay, and they were amongst his companions, he knew. He said, "Ya Ali, they will take the Khilafah from you. They will do it. And when they do, don't fight them. Preserve the blood of the believers, preserve your blood, don't fight them." And so when he said that, why didn't he get rid of them from his companion, or even, finish them? So there are certain things that, again, we cannot fully understand the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in it, and how does it work, and how does His mercy apply there. Nevertheless, we know that it is fair and just, and it is a favor from him that we existed in the first place. And we have to always remind ourselves that Inna Allah yaghfiru dhunuba jami'a. God forgives all the sins. Okay. So what does it take? That's up to him. How does it work? That's up to him. And we should not be judgmental. We associate and dissociate based on what? Based on what we see, the apparent, so that we become like those who we associate with and not like those who we dissociate ourselves from. Okay. Though their ending may be different. Okay. The famous Hur al-Riyahi, he started in a position that we would not want to associate with him or someone like him when he came and stopped Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Now his ending is clear to everybody. He became an example. Is he the only one who ends like that? Starting with a beginning like this and ends like that? Not necessarily. Many people would do that. So the ends are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He knows. And then even if they die with all their accounts, he knows why and how to deal with them. Okay, what level of intellect, how much shahwa did they have versus others, how much exposure to goodness versus lack of exposure, how much shayateen around them, because that all accounts. Some of the kings or fara'ina, if it wasn't for people around them, they would not be able to get there, and they would not even think of them so high. People clapping for them make them so, grow so much bigger and so much more arrogant. So that all of these people are agents, shayateen al-jinni wal-ins. So how much of that did they get and so on? All of that is in the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أحسن الله إليكم. قل لو شاء الله. Ayah 16. قل لو شاء الله ما تلوته عليكم. Now the response to the other part of the question. They said ائت بقرآن غير هذا أو بدل. They said bring another Quran or change this one. They changed this one. He said قل ما يكون لي أن أبدله in ayah 15. In ayah 16, the bringing another Quran is responded to when he says, if God wanted, قل لو شاء الله ما تلوته عليكم. This Quran that I have recited to you, if God wanted, I would not recite it to you, and you would not even know about it. ولا أدراكم به. You wouldn't even know about it. So the fact that this is what I'm reciting to you, that I can't bring another Quran, is because this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, based on the Mashiach of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لو شاء الله ما تلوته. I would not have recited it upon you. ولا أدراكم به. You wouldn't even have known it. ولا أدراكم به. You wouldn't even know about it. An example of the fact that you wouldn't know about it is a beautiful proof that afterwards he says, use your intellect. أفلا تعقلون. What is this beautiful proof? He says, I lived amongst you before this. فقد لبثت فيكم عمرا من قبله. Before the Quran, before the recitation of this Quran that you want me to bring another one, it is not me who brought this one to bring another one. لو شاء الله ما تلوته. I would not have recited it, let alone another one. I would not have recited it. You would not have known about it if God wanted. I lived amongst you for years before it. Umran, alive. The Prophet was not young. He was in his 40s in Mecca. He was in his 40s until early 50s. So I lived amongst you for years before it. And I did not recite anything. Did I ever come and say, this is a Quran from God? Did I ever? So I am not bringing something from myself to go and get another one. I can't do that because it is the wish of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلْ لَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ مَا تَلَوْتُهُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَا أَدْرَاكُمْ بِهِ. Then he says, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Use your intellect. This is very important. Quran often tells us to use our intellect. Why? Because sometimes the proof is very clear. Now, they were mesmerized by the Quran. They knew, why are they saying bring another one? They're saying bring another one because this is amazing, but it doesn't suit them. Change it. Why? Because if you change it, it's beautiful, it's amazing. They were so excited about literature and poetry that they had their best poetry hung on the Kaaba. They called them al-mu'allaqat. And often it was 7 that they would choose the best and they would put them on the Kaaba, al-mu'allaqat as-sab'a. They had a marketplace for poetry where they would come from different, like the flea market here, people coming from different cities and offering their merchandise. They would come from different cities offering their poetry. Okay, the latest poem that they said. Now, for Quraysh to have the Prophet amongst them, it was a big thing because he was saying something that they could not even bring anything like it. Okay, it was so beautiful that they were all mesmerized by it. They were all drawn to it because poetry is not just about rhyming, it's about content. And the more powerful the content and the meanings, the more powerful the poem is. The rhyme is an aspect to it, but there is more significance on the meaning. So he is bringing content that they cannot even bring anything like it. So it was amazing, but they wanted it changed only because it does not suit their ideology, their beliefs, and so on. So they loved it, but they're saying, bring another one, bring something غير هذا أو بدله, or change it. So he is أفلا تعقلون. He's saying, use your intellect. I have never been a poet. I never said poetry. I lived amongst you for years before this. فقد لبثت فيكم عمرا من قبله. 2 things, or many more than, but at least 2 things here. One is, all these years I lived amongst you, you knew that I am the truth telling. I'm a sadiq. Yeah? I would not be lying to you. I'm telling you, this is from God. And if I told you that there's a tribe attacking you, and he did this on them. He said, if I told you that there's a tribe attacking you, what would you do? They said, we would prepare ourselves to fight them back. We would not doubt you for a second. He says, well, I'm telling you, I am the messenger of God, and there is a day of judgment, and so on. So here, one aspect of I lived amongst you for years, you know my character. I have been the truth-telling. I've never been a liar, one. You know my character. I've never been a poet. I've never gone to any teacher and never said poetry. Nobody taught me these things that I'm sharing with you. Nobody taught me literature. Nobody taught me poetry. And I'm sharing with you such beautiful signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Use your intellect. So it is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I cannot change it. I cannot bring something different. And the confirmation is through your own intellect. You could see it, the fact that I lived amongst you for all these years. Then, going similar to the previous ayah 15, when he said, I cannot change it, and I fear the adab yawmin azim, reminds of akhirah, reminds us of akhirah and the consequences of one's actions. Here, another reminder of the consequences of one's action, although it could be about both the tabdil or the taghyir. the change or the exchange, like bringing another one or tweaking and changing it. So he says, فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا أَوْ كَذَّبَ بِآيَاتِهِ. Who is more oppressive? This فَمَنْ أَظْلَمْ has come in multiple ayat. So some may say, well, if these people are the most oppressive, why did the Quran say it about some other people? Okay, the answer to that is these are the most oppressive. There don't have to be only one category. These are the highest level of oppression, representing the highest level of oppression, whether it be those who ascribe partners for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or those who fabricate words and say this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. Here, he says, who is more oppressive? In other words, this is the highest level of oppression. One is man iftara ala Allahi kadiban, one who lies against God, says that this is what God says when God did not say it. That is the most oppressive. If you say that this is what Dad said and he did not say that, he will be upset. What if it's what if you say it against the king to try and achieve something? Not just the father, but now the king. You're in trouble. Now you're saying it against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Huh? So this is the highest level of oppression. فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. Lying against not anyone, but against God. That is extreme oppression. So then this would relate to tabdil, changing, saying that this is from God when it's not from God. And then the other part, it says, أَوْ كَذَّبَ بِآيَاتِهِ, or he denies the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he finishes with إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. This is a great crime. Mujrim is one who is a criminal, who commits a great crime. And so he says, إِنَّهُ, surely the ones who are criminals will never be successful. لَا يُفْلِحُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ. So this is such a great crime, and it is the highest level of oppression. What is it? Two things. One is to fabricate lies on God, and the other one is to deny God's ayat. Okay? Now, there are different suggestions about who are these two groups. Some say both of them are related to the mushrikeen, who are the addressee of the Quran in these ayat, and the response from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is given to them. So he is responding to them. They're saying, change the Quran and so on. So this is addressing both of them. Iftara ala Allahi kadiban is when they are lying about God, suggesting that he has partners, or lying about God, suggesting that he assigned certain responsibilities to these idols. So this is the first thing, the first crime and dhulm. Iftara ala Allahi kadiban, to make up. Iftara is to fabricate, to make up something against God when it's a lie. And then أو كذب بآياته, here it refers to them denying. Yeah, they are denying the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying it's a lie. Because they're not accepting the Quran being from God. That's why they're saying change it or bring another one. If they are acknowledging that it's from God, they wouldn't say change it or bring another one. Quran is based on them suggesting or assuming that it's from him. If it is from God, if they're acknowledging that, then they should not be saying that. That is one suggestion, that both are about them Yet one of them is because they fabricate lies about God and idols and his partners and all of these things. The other one is they deny his Quran, his ayat. Another suggestion is the first part is about the Prophet and the second part is about them. The first part about the Prophet in the sense that he told them, if I try and change it, I would be disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If I try and change it, I would be exposing myself to the torment of the great day. عذاب يوم عظيم. And here he's reminding them of that by saying, فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. If I try and change it, I am making up lies against God. Okay? And the second part related to them because you are denying his ayat. So he's putting himself with them. Okay? If I change it or you continue to deny it, we are the most oppressive. فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا أَوْ كَذَّبَ بِآيَاتِهِ. That's the second suggestion. The first one is referring to him, and the second one is referring to them. The third one is both of them referring to himself. How? So the first part is based on the tabdil, and the second part is based on the تغيير, meaning فَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا is when he is saying, if I change it, tabdil, if I change any of the ayat, I say this is an ayat from this Quran, or I add something, deduct something, the ayat about the idols, I remove them, and so on. The ayat, I introduce some ayat about the idols, like they accuse him of the ayatush gharaniq, the satanic verses that are suggested and later on used by Salman Rushdie and the likes, were actually, sadly enough, were the product of fabrications of the early Muslims, or the early narrators and fabricators and hypocrites. So they accused the Prophet ﷺ of making up ayat and praising their idols. So for instance, in the Surah Al-Jinn, they say that he acknowledged that these idols are the highest gods that he adores. تِلْكَ الْغَرَانِيقُ الْعُلَى. He says, أَفَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى وَمَنَاةَ الثَّالِثَةَ الْأُخْرَى. Then he fabricated, according to them, he fabricated, and then he said, no, this was from shaitan. So this is a suggestion that they have in their books, and we say there's no way that could have been the case. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if he makes up a little thing against us, وَلَوْ تَقَوَّلَ عَلَيْنَا بَعْضَ الْأَقَاوِيلِ, all would have taken is just something to say against us. We would have seized him with the right. Then we would have cut his jugular. ثُمَّ لَقَطَعْنَا مِنْهُ الْوَتِينَ. And nobody would have been able to help him. Nobody would have been able to aid him at that point. So God is saying that not because he has anything against the messenger. No, it is a confirmation to say there's no way he would make up anything. Yet they accused him of that. So here he is saying any kind of fabrication, any kind of tweaking and changing is the greatest level of dhulm. And also, if I say this is not, don't take this Quran anymore, and I want to bring you another Quran, this is denial of his ayat. كَذَّبَ بِآيَاتِهِ. That also puts me in the highest level of dhulm. So there are three different suggestions. As we said, the first is to say both groups are the mushrikeen, or those who are denying. They are fabricating lies against God about the idols and suggesting that these are not ayat from God, or the first one being the Prophet and the second being the mushrikeen, or both the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All the meanings could be correct, or could be somehow combined. We don't have to, it doesn't need to be this and not the other. Okay, so it could be combined in a way. So it's because it's a proof, no matter which way you look at it, it's a proof about the authenticity of the Quran and it being a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have no issues with it, whichever way we understand it. I don't know how we're going. We have some time. Yeah? So ayah 18, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes them once again, those who are offended by the Quran somehow. They want the Quran to change so that they would accept it. They want him to bring another Quran so that they would accept it because it's offending them. Why? Because it is again speaking ill of their idols and their rituals. So they had many, not just the idols, by the way. The biggest problem about the idols is that those who fabricate those lies against God and suggest that there are these idols and then they make temples, often they fabricate laws and rituals. And that's the most important, that's the biggest problem. That's the most dangerous thing because they then lead humanity into a path of destruction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established the justice that He established in the Holy Quran and in His scriptures, in the Quran, in the previous messages and the messengers, all of that to establish the equity and justice on earth. In Surah Al-Hadid, it's very clear. لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ. We sent our messengers with clear proofs, and we sent the books and all of the messages and all of the books, and even the struggles that the prophets went through, hadith that they had to fight and carry the sword and fight. All of these things. Why? لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. God is declaring it clearly. It is so that people can establish justice. The purpose of it is to establish justice. So if that is the purpose, then what happens to polytheism? Why is it the greatest dhulm? إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. Why polytheism? You may say, well, that has nothing to do with how people live. No, that's exactly the issue. They create multiple gods and they create all these fabrications and they then make rituals and ascribe all sorts of lies about God's laws. And so what we have today, when you strip people from the God and his books, the scriptures, Quran and so on, what do you have? You have people who who can't even identify as what they are. Huh? They're now confused about their own gender. Huh? This is how far we've gone. You can't even. I was on there's Wednesday night, the night of Wilada. I asked the question: why do we speak about Amir al-Mu'mineen or the Imams of Ahlul Bayt or the prophets in general? That was my question to come to the answer. So I said, why do you speak about him and / them? Okay. And then I did not bring, it's not a confusing state of the pronoun. I literally mean him as the Imam, them as the Ahlul Bayt, and not confused pronoun. But this is the sad reality that we're living in a world that people have this kind of a situation, like, okay, now them. Okay, who is them? One, in any case. So again, these are the consequences of deviations from God's laws. That's literally what it is. And that is what leads to greatest levels of oppression. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want us to go near that. So the greatest dhulm is shirk because it would lead to a very oppressive society. It would lead to a very deviated and oppressive society that would lead to the destruction of mankind, complete destruction. If you destroy the family, you have destroyed the humanity. Family is the smallest union in a society. And a family union being healthy means the society is healthy. A destroyed and unhealthy family simply means that the society is unhealthy and on the path of destruction. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to establish justice by recognizing His laws so that we don't destroy ourselves. He doesn't need our worship. He doesn't need our obedience. He is not harmed by our, God forbid, sinfulness. He's not affected whatsoever. All of it is for us. وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ. Now, He is telling us that these mushrikeen, that they don't use their aql, that they're denying the Quran, it's not fitting well with them. It doesn't taste well for them. Why? Because of the start of it. وَيَعْبُدُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ مَا لَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُم. They worship besides God the things that they worship have no benefit for them and no harm. لَا يَضُرُّهُم. They cannot bring any harm to them. وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُم. Then they do not have any benefit for them. They have stories, and they fabricate those stories that somebody offended the the idol. They have a statue. Somebody offended it, so now God is angry, and so the consequences, anything evil that they see, this is from this offensive behavior of this person. And so this is why they said to the Prophet, anytime something good happened, they said this is from God. And anytime something evil happened, they said this is because of you, because of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because he's offending their gods. So they make the links in this way. When in actual reality, it's all based on the will and the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. قُلْ كُلُّ مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. Good, bad, whatever is happening is through the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but He clarifies the good is from Him, evil is because of their own actions, from their own hands. So these gods have no harm and no benefits. They cannot do anything. They bring no harm, nor do they bring any benefits. وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُم. So what do they say? وَيَقُولُونَ هَؤُلَاءِ شُفَعَاؤُنَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. They say that these idols are our intercessors with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the one God, with the Creator. So they acknowledge that there is a Creator. They acknowledge that there is a one God who is above all. Okay? But they believe that these idols are their intercessors, their assignees. God assigned them, and they have their powers and so on. وَيَقُولُونَ هَؤُلَاءِ شُفَعَاؤُنَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. This response from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to them, very powerful and based on evidence, basically document. He says, قُلْ أَتُنَبِّئُونَ اللَّهَ بِمَا لَا يَعْلَمُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَلَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. You're telling God something He doesn't know? So on the one level, it's saying this Quran is from God. Whatever He says, this is from Him. And then, on the other hand, it's saying, if what you are suggesting is true, where is it? Where? Bring me the evidence. Perhaps a scripture from a prophet that says that these idols are the intercessors with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some evidence. If you don't have that evidence, Therefore, you are fabricating things and just telling God that this is what you have said. أتنبئون Allah. You're giving some news to God, and it's amazing because naba is news that was unknown. So you're telling something to God that He didn't know about the heavens and the earth. في السماوات ولا في الأرض بما لا يعلم في السماوات ولا في الأرض. You're telling God something that He didn't know. You're giving some news to God about something that He did not know. About, again, their idols being their intercessors and so on. And then He says, قل أتنبئون الله بما لا يعلم في السماوات ولا في الأرض سبحانه وتعالى عما يشركون. Tasbih is what we call in Arabic tanzih as well. Tasbih is to say God is above that. He is clear from that. He is pure. He is completely far from what you are suggesting. And so ta'ala here, it actually also gives the same meaning. Ta'ala is He is so high, okay? Not in the physical high and low in that sense, but high as in far above that, far above what you are describing and ascribing against Him. Amma yushrikun. This shirk that they are fabricating against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is far from that, and He is high above that. He is far from that completely. And that is, now they often translate it as subhanahu is, I think, glorified. That's ta'ala. Exalted is ta'ala. Yeah? Glorious, yeah. But I don't know if the term glorious has the meaning of tanzih, to say He is far from that. He is. Maybe it does. I'm not sure. I have to research it further. I mean, glorious is it's a beautiful term. I don't believe it would give the right meaning of tasbih. Tasbih is more than that. That is, yeah, ta'ala, they say exalted, because exalted from high, okay, some high, so they use exalted for ta'ala. So glorious and exalted is what they normally use. Nevertheless, tasbih has more than that. Tasbih has the concept of tanzih. I don't know if it's used in Urdu. It's in Farsi, they use it. Tanzih is understood in Farsi typically. I'm not sure in munazzah, no? So again, it is to say that He is completely far from this. He is clear, basically clear from what they are attaching to Him. That has nothing to do with Him, and He is high above that. He doesn't need these intercessors. He doesn't need helpers. He doesn't need assignees who would do things for Him. He doesn't need any of that, and therefore this is far from Him. That makes Him, in a sense, needy, and brings about the chaos that any level of shirk would bring. Shirk brings chaos to human society. Shirk, if it was true, God says, if shirk was true, the universe would be chaotic. If shirk was true, in the sense that if there were idols and partners for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the universe would have been chaotic. In other words, God is telling us, if shirk is obviously it's not true, but if you believe in it, it will bring chaos to your life, because we live based on our beliefs. We succeed if we believe we're successful, or we're going to be successful. We fail if we believe we're failures. We're strong if we believe we're strong. If we believe in partners for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that leads to destruction. That leads to chaos. That leads to a chaotic society. When you have tawheed, and the religion from God, his principles are one, then the society will have basically all the society would live in peace and synchrony with the universe, because the universe is not chaotic. As soon as we start defying God's laws, which is again based on shirk. Shirk is what then brings about the suggestions. When we start accepting some level, this we will accept, this we will not accept, I'm going to, and this is the problem of denying prophets. Denying prophets leads to levels of shirk, because okay, we're going to accept this prophet, but we're going to stick to this, and we're not going to go further. Okay, we're not going to accept Jesus because that goes against our temple. So what happens? Then they have all these other lawmakers. All these scholars become lawmakers. Each one of those liars, the reality, each one of those liars and deniers becomes a lawmaker. And they have a different law based on what suits them individually or suits them at that time. So those laws keep changing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, you make your, speaking to Bani Israel, He says, you make your book into pages, qaratis. تخفونها, you show some of it and hide some of it. Based on what? Based on what suits you. So the law is there, God's law is there, but their level of denial of God, and that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَرْبَابًا مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Say to Ahl al-Kitab, this is an amazing ayah. Say to Ahl al-Kitab, تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم, come so that we can come to a unified word between us. What is it? That we don't worship any other than God. And what else? And we don't make some of us gods besides God. Min dunillah, besides the one God. Who are these some of us that we're making them gods? It is not just because some suggested that Jesus or Isa alayhi salam, peace be upon him, is God. No, not just them. Because Quran also says that they take اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. They considered their priests, whether Christian or Jews, they considered them as gods besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Lawmakers. If you obey them, you are worshipping them. This is a shirk.
This one, the rab is used, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think other places are also used.
Yes.
So arbab, I think, doesn't have to be a lot, right?
Yeah, I mean it can be arbab can be used for, because he is Rabb as well.
Because
Allah.
this is very widespread, right? You take people your Lord kind of.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what they did, and then they suggested that, knowing and acknowledging that there's one God. It's like you speak to any Christian today, they'll tell you it's one, okay, but then how it works, I don't know. I mean, they still tell you have to believe. They don't know either. Nevertheless, they make all these laws that different. Now you have, for instance, let's say today, how many types of churches do we have? Okay, and that's not just Christians or Jews. We have that in Islam as well. Okay, when we put certain people as idols, don't touch them, Sahaba, don't touch them. That's it, untouchables. What happens then? Then you have so many muftis, so many lawmakers. A mufti is what? A lawmaker. And they become like gods. Okay, he said this is haram, this is haram. He said this is halal, this is halal. I want to understand God's law. Don't tell me Imam Fulan and Imam Fulan. I want to know God's law. This is they copied. Basically, they copied the ones before them. That's why Quran kept on telling us this is Ya Bani Israel and Yahud and Nasara, Ahl al-Kitab. Why? So that we don't do the same, make the same mistakes. Okay, they made some mistakes. We don't want to make the same mistakes. We want to get it right. Getting it right is God's law is one. That's it. No one had authority unless they're divinely appointed. This is why how important the concept of divine leadership and wilaya is important in the school of Ahlul Bayt, although some misunderstand it and so on, is because we do not accept anyone to be a leader from God unless appointed by God. Full stop. These people, whether it be Khulafa al-Rashidin, how did you choose them? Okay, you call them Khulafa al-Rashidin. How did you choose them? Tell me. We spoke last night. I mentioned the first, a bunch of them got together. The second one, the first one says, "I want you to be the one." The third one is the most interesting. The second one says, the 6 people, if 5 of them agree and 1 disagrees, the 5 kill the 1. He's speaking about the best people who existed at that time, that he wants one of them to be the leader of the ummah. Okay, but one of them should be killed because he disagreed. If 4 of them agreed and 2 disagreed, then you kill the 2. The 4 kill the 2. Amazing. And the whole formula, it's like he was planning it in a certain way. And if 3 of them agree on one and the other 3 agree on the other, then you go with the one that Abdurrahman ibn Auf is with. He's the determined. And he had briefed him, obviously, on, be careful what you get as rights of being an Arab and Quraysh. At my time, you won't get it if Ali becomes there. Because he literally asked Imam Ali alayhi salam, before he gave his bay'ah to Uthman, he said, Ya Ali, do you promise that you will follow the sunnah of the law of God and the messenger and the 2 before you? And the 2, this is important, and the 2 before you. The Imam says, God, the messenger, no problem. The 2 before, if they're the same, there's no need to add them. If they're different, then obviously I can't follow them. And he says, yeah, Ali, you always win a debate. You're either gonna give me that thing or agree or not disagree. So it was none. And the 3rd Khalifa became the Khalifa. So this is when we don't follow God's system. God has a system. The Prophet already appointed. Ya ayyuha nabiyyu, ya ayyuha rasulu, balligh ma unzila ilayka min rabbik. This is tabligh from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not a joke for people to decide, okay, we're going to decide on this person and he's going to become God's representative upon us. His verdict is the verdict of God. And whatever he does is justified. He orders for the killing of a tribe, we go and kill them. He orders for the burning of a bunch of people, we burn them. Whatever he orders. And this is what literally happened right after Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The wars of what they call Ridda. All of these Hurub al-Ridda were actually against Muslims who were praying. But they did not accept the Khilafah. They questioned the representation of the Prophet by these individuals. They said, we know the Prophet, okay, no problem, but who are you? And so that led to wars of labeling those as kuffar, murtaddin, and therefore apostates, and they went ahead and wiped them out, killed them. Again, anytime we deviate from God's law and make idols, whatever these idols may be. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, I was saying that the problem was that the scholars how do we make sure that we don't follow that?
Yeah.
We still have scholars.
Yeah.
Still have us, and they still differ.
Yeah.
So
how do we not?
What's
yeah. That's a very, very, very valid question. Very good point. one thing that unfortunately humans fall into that trap often is idealizing people. Okay. Uh, and oftentimes it has nothing to do with their virtues or even it's not it's not merit based. Okay, it's more so based on other factors. Okay, this is a common thing that happens in human beings, and yes, the followers of Ahlul Bayt sometimes fall for that, and I'm not denying that. We have certain things that may make us resemble the mushrikeen in making some artifacts and thinking that they are blessed, that they're holy, that now we can get some blessings from those things. This is a level of, basically going with that. We have some who idealize people, individuals, scholars maybe, to a point that they become untouchable. No questions. You ask a question, you are now no longer a believer. Okay, immediately they make one excluded from the entire faith or the entire school of Ahlul Bayt because how dare you question this individual. So that kind of idealizing of an individual is definitely wrong. And yes, humans do have those tendencies. And subhanallah, often I find people who are less intellectual and more blind followers fall for those things. You'll find those.
Like, to what degree, like, because, okay, one issue is maybe scholars disagreeing, but then also as somebody who thinks have as much knowledge as scholars, and you know, to listen to or what to question or what not to question.
Yeah. So one thing is ilm versus lack of ilm. So one who Quran often encourages us to seek knowledge. And what is happening here is important because it is seeking knowledge. So those who have more knowledge, have better understanding, have less, are at less risk of falling for those things. Okay, we have, for instance, nowadays some which I would refer to as na'at, loudspeakers, who have good podiums, good media, powerful satellite TV channels and YouTube channels and so on, and they have ratings and so they are polluting the minds of the people. Who can identify their lies and fabrications and innovations? One who has knowledge. Okay, so one who has some level of knowledge and one who is, and this is why Imam Ali alayhi salam clearly says people are of three groups. There's Alim al-Rabbani, the one who has reached already. There are godly scholars, divinely inspired and taught and supported scholars. And this perhaps refers to the Awsiya, Anbiya and Awsiya. And maybe it could include the ones who are next to them. Okay, like we are remembering Sayyidah Zainab, salamullah alayha. She is not a prophet and she is not an imam, but Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, he says, you are, bihamdillah, alima ghayr muallam. You are a scholar even without being taught. In other words, you are alima rabbaniya. She reached a level of the ilm taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that level of knowledge. Salman al-Farisi perhaps was one of those. Salman al-Muhammadi was one of those who reached that level of knowledge. He's not an imam, he's not a prophet, but he reached that level. We have, for instance, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, for example. The imams of Ahlul Bayt, they refer to some of their very dedicated students as that as well. So we have some of the companions of the imams and students of the imams who reached that, Alim al-Rabbani. So the second group, the imam says, وَمُتَعَلِّمٌ عَلَى سَبِيلِ نَجَاتٍ. one who is seeking knowledge to find salvation, on a path to salvation. So salvation is sought with what? How can we achieve salvation? Seeking knowledge. If we don't, we have a problem. If anybody ever thinks that I am perfect, we have, that's again from Imam Ali alayhi salam, the ocean of wisdom. He says, رضاك عن نفسك فساد عقلك. The minute you are pleased with yourself, you have completely destroyed your intellect. God gave you the intellect. Fasad is like when the fruits go bad. It may still look good, but it's actually defected. It's a defect of the aql, of one's intellect, to be pleased with oneself. Don't be pleased with yourself. رضاك عن نفسك فساد عقلك. Meaning what? I should constantly be improving, seeking knowledge and purifying. علم and تزكية. يعلمهم ويزكيهم. علم and تزكية. Constantly purify myself, better myself, and seek more knowledge. Don't become one of those who becomes part of ahzab, parties. This is our party. Now we have this in this community. The party of this part of the community versus the party of that part of the community. I think some of you know what I'm referring to. And so we put some acronyms. We don't even have the word. Some acronyms, and we're this acronym and not this acronym. And these people will not communicate with these people. These people will not marry from these people. These people will accuse these. All sorts of nonsense. This is blindness. This is how people turn off their intellect. They don't look with their aql, they look with their emotions. I belong to this group, I'm going to defend them to death, no matter what. Okay? And sometimes, it was just the first wrong step. And that leads to the rest of the steps being wrong, because now I ascribe myself as a member of this party. And I'm one of this group. One of the companions of Amir al-Mu'minin and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Abu Bakr when he first announced, the Khilafah and whatever else. There were 12 of them that addressed him, and every one of them admonished him and so on. And historians say he stayed in his house 3 days after this, because he heard so much. He i'tazala an-nas. He went for 3 days in his house until others came and gave him the support and swords and said, you have to come out and whatever else. Obviously led by Umar, as usual. One of them, he said to him, now that it has not gone too far, give the right of Ahlul Bayt back to them. Now, since it has not gone too far, this is very deep. Because when you go too far into it, you're part of this party, you have to defend it. Otherwise, you are destroying yourself. And this is difficult. Those who convert or reverts, they crush themselves. What they believed in and their ancestry and their families all these years, or the enlightened ones, Mustafsirin, that choose the school of Ahlul Bayt. It's like my entire family, my entire life, all of a sudden I have to destroy all that. That's very difficult. So yes, some people are capable, but others are not. So seeking knowledge and purification is the way to come out of that, and not, if one realizes, and not be pleased with oneself. If I realize I'm mistaken, don't allow shaitan and my arrogance, my nafs, to say, no, I'm going to continue on this path because I can't. Now I've gone too far. No, I am wrong. I'm going to go back on the right path. So if we are constantly seeking knowledge, trying to improve, and not being pleased with ourselves, we'll be fine. We'll find salvation one way or another. And the third group, the Imam says, وَهَمَجٌ رُعَى. They are basically the herds that follow the loudspeakers. Okay? أَتْبَاعُ كُلِّ نَاعِقٍ. A loudspeaker has access to some level of media, and they are, sharing it. Controversies nowadays are shared, and some people form opinions with no knowledge, forming opinion. Okay, I have people coming up to me, this guy, I don't know, from Africa, Tanzania, a young speaker, he's saying this, and this guy from Birmingham is saying this, and whatever, and you know, you know, they have a point, they have theirs, and again, they already formed the opinion before they even put that idea with another scholar to even debate it or seek knowledge to understand it deeply, because these speakers are very well spoken, they're eloquent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes some of those in the Quran. وَإِذَا رَأَيْتَهُمْ تُعْجِبُكَ أَجْسَامُهُمْ وَإِن يَقُولُوا تَسْمَعْ لِقَوْلِهِمْ, you know, كأنهم خشب مسندة. Okay, if they're impressive. Even the Prophet was impressed by some of those figures. Their, you know, their attires, their build, and their speech. Okay, so they impressed the people. To avoid being amongst those who are blindly following, we need to seek knowledge. We cannot sit with no knowledge, be on the edge, and hope for, you know, God's mercy to come.
The question is, where does, because there are some speakers, maybe you don't know the level of knowledge, how do you know which speakers, which scholars, which ones are like the lawmakers, or the negative ones, the teacher, and positive sense? Is it just that we're supposed to, like you said, not idealize, have critical thinking of all of them?
Yeah, critical thinking, at the same time, using, not having, again, not idealizing anybody, not having parties, not going based on my tribe and my, you know, family or my group. Because they follow him, I follow him. Because my tribe follows him, I follow him. That's so cool. اللهم صل على محمد. So definitely that critical thinking, and not becoming a blind follower who has allegiance, like he gives, that's it, I gave my allegiance here, I am loyal here, I'm not going to change from that. So not having that position, not being pleased with our own selves, because we grow and our minds grow with us. Today, my beliefs and my understandings of things cannot be and should not be the same as me a year ago or 10 years ago. I should be progressing, moving forward. So yes, we should be open to changing our opinion, changing our minds about things, and that's one important factor. However, in this, one of the most important in this path of purification, so we said ilm and tazkiyah. Yeah, so seeking knowledge is one. The other one is tazkiyah. Tazkiyah does not happen without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help. And that's what we need to understand. So seeking forgiveness, I sometimes tell, especially the youth, you know, when they come questioning things and they cannot make sense of the law, I tell them, seek forgiveness. You may have had some sins that are blinding your mind, and so you need to seek forgiveness, and then you can have the clear mind and heart to accept goodness and the truth. So very important, seeking forgiveness for our mistakes, for our errors, constantly purifying so that we can open our hearts and minds to accepting the truth, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give it to us. إنما العلم نور. Ilm is not based on reading a lot of books and so on. It's a light. God gives it to those whom He wishes. Based on what? There's no dhulm, there's no oppression. It is based on those who purify. They become deserving, therefore He grants them the knowledge. He knows that they are good carriers of it. So inshallah we are amongst them. But yes, that's a very good reflection that we all need to be careful not to become praise to the same idealizing methodology of other groups of faith or other sects within Islam, or other even groups within the school of Ahlul Bayt. We have that as well, and we have to be careful of that so we don't fall for that, inshallah. Thank you for that, not just question, but observation, I would call it. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.